On today's episode, we're going to explore a surprising but critical retirement question. What will you do with your 1,000 hours a year? Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake. Today, we're going to dive into a concept that really resonated with me from a recent Kiplinger article titled The Rule of 1,000 Hours in Retirement. And we'll actually link to that article in the show notes. But to help me joining me in breaking this down is my wonderful producer, Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
Oh, stop. Tell me more. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So this is an article that actually was sent to me by my mother, who, like very many of our listeners, is approaching retirement. And she's starting to really think seriously. And I wouldn't even doubt, I think worry is probably creeping in there somewhere as well, about how she's going to spend her time when work isn't filling every single calendar day. And that's why this concept was so important, because it's just not about money. So we talk a lot about money and being prepared financially. Do I have enough? All those types of questions. But in this, I really want to talk about creating a meaningful and purposeful retirement lifestyle.
That's right. You need to have a purpose.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's why, as I was thinking about it, what popped into my head as well was thinking about how it's a lot like being a business owner. You think about it, there's not a boss telling you what to do. And you got to, if you're going to be productive and you're going to be, happy and make things work, you got to plan your own time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I'm a terrible business owner, terrible at it.
Well, then your input's going to be greatly valuable in terms of talking about retirement.
Great.
Because that's going to be, one of the things, again, as you're talking about whether it's a business owner or specifically in our conversation about retirement, again, there's nobody telling you what to do. It's just you. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that people find challenging is, how do I fill that time? And so what I want to do is kind of break down, just going from what the article talks about, is number one, where does that 1,000 hours come from? How did they come up with that? So I want to talk through that a little bit first. So if we're breaking this down, we can say, okay, there's about 8,760 hours in a year, right?
Okay.
And you say, okay, you always use that concept. You spend a third of your life in the bed.
Right.
You spend about 2,920 hours sleeping, about 8 hours a night, hopefully. If it's, I don't actually ever make 8 hours a night.
No. Yeah, that's a dream, right?
Yeah. I'm there 6.5, but for conversation purposes, it makes the math a lot easier. Then you get, your working years, it's 8 hours a day, we assume. It's somewhere around 8 hours a day, not including any commuting time or preparation time or anything else that might be going into your day as far as when you're working. And then when you think about it in retirement, those same 8 hours, they don't just stay open. So somewhere maybe half of those are going to be, call it 4 hours a day, are going to be filled up with errands or appointments or other family commitments or just kind of daily life, things that are just going to happen throughout the day. So that leaves, based on the research that they've done, based on this article, about 4 hours a day. If we just say 5 days a week, that's about 20 hours a week. So you look at that and say, okay, 20 hours a week times, call it 50 weeks a year, 252 weeks a year, somewhere around 1,000 hours.
Okay.
And so what part of the article also that I think is important to touch on is it wasn't just about, how do we fill those 1,000 hours, which again is important. But one of the things that was interesting, and I think even maybe a little bit concerning, was that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics from the American Time Use Survey, Americans spend nearly 3 hours a day watching television.
Yeah, I do much more than that.
Wow. And that's what it talks about, making that's actually the most popular leisure activity out there. So it's actually not going for walks or whatever else you might be
doing.
It's watching TV, which, it is what it is. That is one of the, entertainment factors with all the different shows and channels and everything that are out there. But the other thing is, though, with the retirees, that number does rise to maybe more than like 4 hours a day. So you go above those averages when you get to retirement because you haven't looked at other ways to fill your time. And there's actually a retirement coach. His name was Robert Laura. And the way he put it was, this is a quote from him: "Unfortunately, many people think they're going to be someone different in retirement, but they're not. In fact, it's you times 2.
Oh, right.
So whatever you're doing before you retire, you're going to do double that when you do get to retirement.
Right.
And so that was really, in terms of this discussion, why I felt it was so important, because it comes down to, you have a financial plan, but it goes beyond that. It goes, what my retirement plan needs to be more than just the financial aspects, because it is really easy to let those hours just kind of disappear through some of the more passive activities like watching television, which ultimately, unfortunately, you might kind of find yourself in lack of purpose, or just, what is this all about? Is this really what I retired for?
Right.
And so that's really what I want to talk about, some of the key points to, okay, how can we maybe change the narrative a little bit, and a few different potential strategies we can utilize to make those future years a little bit different.
Okay. And it's funny, I have a neighbor that's about 85, and he says that the couch and the remote are your biggest enemy in
Yes.
retirement. He's a big time gardener. He has like a whole produce section in his yard. He grows everything. So that occupies a lot of his time.
Well, and actually I've got a client that we actually met yesterday, and I kind of touched on a few of these things. So we've kind of for a while been talking about 70. She didn't necessarily want to work, but now all of a sudden she's thinking, hey, what about 67? Can we make that work? And I said, well, if that's the case, you're less than 5 years from now. It's about 5 years from that. So we need to start thinking about some of these things, just to be aggressively thinking about it, but at least start thinking about what you're going to do. How are you going to spend your time? And I said, I was actually going to be talking about this on the podcast today. And that troubling statistic about the television. She said, well, and using some of these examples of, unfortunately, so many people sitting and watching CNN or Fox News or whatever side of the fence they may be on. And she goes, oh, that's a recipe for dementia. Because she's a psychologist.
And a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, she's a psychologist. So it's not like she's just making that up and just be saying it because. So
right.
she knows what happens.
Okay.
So that was an interesting conversation that we had in just kind of in preparation for this. But so the first thing, just in terms of, again, things we can start thinking about as you prepare for retirement, maybe if you're earlier in those years in retirement. But, a lot of retirees, they kind of think that time's just going to fill itself and just going to wait around for things to happen. But that'll lead to disappointment because it doesn't happen. You kind of find yourself watching, I'll watch one more episode.
There's binging, the binging
Right.
of the television.
All of a sudden you say, well, I'll watch a couple episodes, and now you've watched all 9 episodes.
The whole season in one day.
Right. So we want to try to be intentional with our time. So thinking about, what activities have you always wanted to pursue, but just never had time for? Okay. And what are the things, and I like this one, what are the things that energize you, or what are the things that you do that make you lose track of time, where you look at, and besides television, because
right,
unfortunately
yeah.
that's one.
That is one.
Right. But that you're doing it, all of a sudden it's a couple hours later and you didn't realize that the time just went by, and you didn't realize it.
Reading does that for me, but I don't think that's something I necessarily want to focus on, too much of my time when it comes to retirement, because
Right.
it's very sedentary, and you
definitely want to make sure you're filling that time with physical activities.
Right.
And we hear all the studies about, pushing weights and strength training or whatever it might be.
Right.
But I do think that reading, though, it's one of those activities that does keep your mind working. So I think from that standpoint,
Right.
it's definitely advantageous. But it's just where you're kind of vegging out and not thinking about anything, where the mind starts you losing traction.
Who does that? Nobody sits around and not thinks about anything anymore. Come on, we got too much to entertain us.
But then the other one was, what makes you excited to just get out of bed every morning? What can you look forward to? Because for so many years, if it could be a 20, 25, 30, 40 year work life where that's what got you up. That's what and hopefully it was something inspiring. Doesn't always mean. Sometimes it's just, hey, I got to pay the bills. So I got to get up. But what is going to get you out of bed in the morning when you're retired and don't have that job or that career or that business to go to any longer?
Okay. So these are things we should be thinking about.
Right. So think
plan
about
ahead.
volunteering. Are there things you want to volunteer, or do you want part-time consulting or care? In many cases, especially for our audience with women, it's caregiving. There's somebody that you might have to take care of, whether that's parents or whatever it might be. But learning a new skill or joining clubs, exploring creative hobbies. Another client was a couple of days ago, where unfortunately we kind of had what our plan was for his retirement, and as will happen, it happened a little sooner than he was expecting.
Okay.
And so now he's in this phase of kind of almost like a panic phase, and he's handling it pretty well, but I got to find a part-time job. I got to do something. I just can't just sit around. And so for some people it is that work. And so whether it's like a Callaway's, which is a nursery around here, there's something like that where it's just something to get out, to stay connected to people. And it doesn't have to be work, of course, but something that inspires you, something that you really enjoy doing, that engages you mentally, physically, whatever the case might be.
Pickleball.
Pickleball, hey, that's an awesome. I'm right there
It
with you on
really
that.
is.
I play too much pickleball already, so I don't know if I can, because I don't know how to, I can't play another 4 hours of pickleball. Though.
And that's how I justify watching too much TV.
That's right. And then also, of course, balancing leisure activities with purpose, with purposeful activities. So again, making sure we're talking about if it's travel, if it's just there is that window of time for relaxation. Doesn't mean you probably have earned it, but is it hobbies, relaxation, picking up a new skill, playing? I mean, pickleball is one of those things you easily can get. If you're into it, you're into it. It's like almost like a cult.
It is, and I'm in it. Yay!
Yeah, hey, I'm right there with you. I'll be playing tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact.
Good for you.
But it just finding those balances of things that you enjoy doing, but also give you purpose. Again, what those things that maybe feed both your happiness and your sense of purpose would be ideal. I mean, that would be great if you can find something that does both of those. And then, of course, thinking about planning your time just like you would your finances. Okay. So I think one of the things that I've learned, and everybody's got their voices that they listen to. I always listen to Jocko Willink's podcast, and Craig Ballantyne is somebody that I follow for many years. Where you think about discipline and how real is discipline, or is it more okay? I just stick to my plan. I develop the plan and I stick to it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of times in terms of flexibility and say, well, I don't want to be tied. I don't want to be tied to a schedule. And all of a sudden you're not tied to a schedule and you're just not doing anything, rather than saying, okay, I can create my own freedom by having things lined out and saying, okay, I'm going to do this from this time to this time. And not everybody's good at that and everybody likes it, but have some form of plan around how you're going to spend your time, just like you would your money. How much,
right?
We go through our Simply Retirement roadmap process. A big part of that is saying, what are your income sources? What are we going to have available? Social Security, retirement distributions. Do you have a pension? Are you going to work? But where's that money going to get spent? Are we going to see, obviously, some of it's groceries and utilities and housing and all those things, but what is going to be your fun money? What are you going to do? Are you going to travel? Are you going to take up something? Are you going to take a class? Same thing with your time. Again, that they both go very well together in terms of saying, okay, well, if I'm going to spend money on this, I got to put it in the schedule.
Right.
Because you also find yourself challenged in saying, okay, if I don't feel comfortable with what I'm doing, then you end up not doing either. You don't spend any time and you don't spend any money either. And you've worked for 40 years to build this money, but now you're not spending it because you're either worried about it or you don't have anything to spend it on. And so both of those can be just as bad.
Okay. Gotcha.
So here's a couple of exercises that were suggested. So say, for example, you might say, okay, let me list 5 things that I want to spend more time on in retirement. So make a list. And especially if you're getting close to retirement, start with just the basic 5 things and then tweak it. Say, as I start thinking about it, it's rolling around in my head a little bit more. Change it, make some adjustments, add more things, whatever it might be. But start with at least just a list of, okay, here's the things I think you'd want to do.
Okay.
And then experimenting with adding those to your current weekly schedule. So are there certain things that you don't have a lot of time for, but you can start plugging them in here and there where you maybe have a little bit of free time and just see if we actually enjoy doing those things. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that in just a second with practicing retirement, which I think is such a huge exercise.
Huh.
So, and then, so adding those things to your schedules, and then again, just like I talked about, adjust as you need to. So your priorities are going to shift, and you're going to learn that, hey, I wanted to play pickleball and I hate it. It's so, whatever it is, whatever you decide to do, you may or may not like it, or you might say, I really do enjoy that. I'm going to spend more time than I thought.
Right. Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere. I think that's the biggest key is you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. You have to kind of experiment with what it is you might like, what you might not like, and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And that brings us to kind of this what I would call our bonus tip. And this is something that I talk to clients a lot about, and that is practice retirement before you retire. So when you think about, because a lot of people overlook at this, and I think, again, this is one of the best strategies you can implement, is when you get to that 12 to 40, I always talk about the 5-year kind of retirement red zone where, when you get within those 5 years, you got a lot of important financial decisions to make. But that just as importantly is some of these time decisions. What am I going to actually spend my time doing? If I'm less than 5 years away, start putting just the small pieces together. But when you get to within that 12 to 24 months before retirement, practice retirement. Create a plan for what I'm going to start looking like. So thinking about, financially, we'll talk about that for just a second. So start potentially living on the income you plan to use in retirement. So I think that's one of the surprising things is people will say, well, I'm living on $10,000 a month now, but I can probably live on six when I retire. Well, is that true?
Right.
I want to see it. I want you to prove that you can do that. I want to prove that you can live on 40% less than you're living on right now.
Right.
So, but because it can be a little bit of a shock. But on the other hand, it actually can be. There's many situations that we deal with where people just find they're not spending as much money as they thought they were going to. And there could be many causes for that. One of them could be lack of planning, time planning. So we've done all the financial work. We got you in good. We know how much income you've got. We got everything set up. We know when you're going to start Social Security. We know when we're going to be taking money from different retirement accounts. And all of a sudden you've got this income and I don't know what to do with it. I'm not spending as much as I thought I would.
Right.
And
That's
so
not
is
going to
it
be my
because-
problem, but I guess some people might have that issue.
Some people do. Again, it's all based on individual circumstances. But again, just see how it feels. Can you comfortably cover the expenses that you think you're going to have, and make sure are there going to be any surprises? And I always talk about kind of start with what you're spending today. Think about what things you're going to get added in. Is more travel? Is it something you're going to spend money on? A hobby that's going to take up your time and money? And what things are going to go away? So if you are traveling to work and that's going to reduce your costs, or you go out to lunch every day when you're working, maybe that goes away. So start doing some of that adding, subtracting, get an idea of what you think you would like to live on in retirement, and then practice that for a while. You might not need 2 years, but at least that last 12 months, so you can start getting a gauge on, okay, have I really thought through this enough to know that I've got the right plan in place?
Yeah, and that's a great idea. Something I would have never thought about. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great. And then time practice. So same thing. So we have a plan for our money, living on what we think we want to live on in retirement, but then start filling your schedule with some of the activities that you expect to pursue in retirement. So is it finding time? If you're going to play pickleball, where are you going to play? Is there a park that's nearby, or do you have to join a club, or what do you have to do to make that happen? Explore new hobbies or volunteer roles, things that are important to you. You've said, I'd always like to give money back to this particular organization. Start looking at what opportunities there are to do that.
Okay,
so look at what volunteer opportunities they have. Do they have events periodically, or there's a Meals on Wheels that's right down the street from us, and you can go in, you can tour the facility, kind of get an idea of what they do, but then you can actually be there prepping the food and then delivering the food and all those types of things and if you really want to give back, things like that can be extremely rewarding. Again, it's activity, it's physical, it's purposeful, all those kinds of things. Maybe not be for everybody, but that would be an example of something where it kind of ties all those pieces together, where you're getting to communicate as well. You're going to see the elderly folks in your neighborhood. You're getting to chat with them, talk to them, and you wouldn't imagine the difference you make in their lives,
right?
Just by having somebody there to talk with.
Yeah, and that's also purpose helps you fulfill your purpose. My sister actually just started doing that, and she's already worried about her people. Like if she has to take a day off, she's like, "Is somebody going to be there to deliver to my people?"
Right, but that's so important. Again, it just drives you. Again, when you think about, hey, what's going to get me up in the morning, that could definitely fill that role.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. But test drive your ideal retirement week. If you say, okay, I've got those 4 hours, what kind of, if you got a vacation week, I wouldn't necessarily take a vacation week to practice retirement necessarily, but
unless you have a lot of vacation time.
Yeah, unless you're really bad at it, then you might need to do that. But yeah, kind of put together what an ideal week would be. And again, a lot of people don't like doing that, but I think it's one of those things that if you don't, again, it's so easy to let time get away from you if you don't plan it out. But kind of put together an ideal week, live it for a couple of days, see how it works. Does it make sense? Do I end up finding myself watching too much television?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Why don't people like the idea of doing that?
I think it's kind of the idea. Well, I've spent the last 40 years working and I've been tied to a schedule. I don't want that anymore. I want to be responsible for my own time.
Okay.
And all of a sudden you are, again, kind of like that business owner process.
Right.
I think if I'm a business owner, I don't have somebody watching me, looking over my shoulder saying, are you busy? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? It's all on you. Very similar to being, again, in retirement, of not having that person, not having that boss checking on you, or knowing nobody really giving you direction or telling you got to get this done, or you have your to-do list. It's all on you. So that's where, again, the idea of saying, well, I don't want to structure my time. Now I'm retired. I want to be able to do what I want to do. Well, then you find yourself not really doing those things because you haven't planned it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was just surprised to hear that people, really didn't want to do the practice. I mean, it's just practice. It's just practice.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more, I think that's that structure piece. And
Yes.
again, I think the idea that you talk about whether you're retiring from something or you're retiring to something. So I think that's one of the things that people say, well, I want to get, I'm retiring from all that structure and from all this instruction and the boss and everything that goes into being an employee or being a business owner. If you happen to be a business owner. And I think, and I know I just use it like my mom's an example. So she's a business owner. She does taxes, she does bookkeeping. And, in her mind, I've been doing this for 40 years. What happens when I don't have these people knocking on my door, needing their taxes done or needing their books done?
Right.
What am I actually going to do with that time? And I think it's for some, it's even scary. I would even say it's scary just to think about that's the case. And I don't think she would ever say, okay, I'm just 100% done. I think she'll continue doing something. We've even had conversations about her maybe incorporating tax preparation into our business. So there's some things we've talked about along those lines, but part of that has stemmed from her thinking, what am I going to do?
Right.
You can't travel 24/7, 7 days a week. You can't play golf 24/7, 7 days a week. So what is that going to look? How am I going to spend my 1,000 hours a year that now I'm responsible for? And I think that can be, again, it can be definitely worrisome to say the least for many people.
Got it.
So again, if you think about your own retirement plans, just ask yourself, what will I do with my 1,000 hours each year? Because if you intentionally plan for both how you're going to spend your money, how you're going to spend your time, hopefully you won't be just retiring from something. You're going to be retiring to something very meaningful. And that's what we would hope for everybody. That is it for today's episode. For all the links and resources, especially that article that we talked about in the episode today, you can visit www.thesimply.retirementpodcast.com. If you're looking for a personalized retirement plan that helps you make smart decisions about your income, your investments, your taxes, you can visit www.getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com to schedule your free retirement assessment. Hopefully that gives you some free time to worry about the things that are most important to you, or to do the things that are most important to you, rather than worry about the financial side of things so much. Because as the saying goes, you can't take the money with you when you're gone. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.